got an off-the-radar transfer portal option for us. Duke killer Olivier Nkamhoua from the Tennessee Volunteers.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Friday, April 14th, 2023. Welcome on into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and I really want to thank you for joining us, especially, man, those of you that are the everydayers diving in with us every day. So fun. I just had a great conversation yesterday with one of you on Twitter, and man, it means the world that you would join the show with us. Coming up on today's show, we're going to look ahead to the spring football game tomorrow on Saturday. Going to take you on a little whip around of Carolina athletics this weekend. But first, I want to keep talking about some of these transfer portal targets for the Tar Heels. So far, we've done a lot of looking at people that are publicly connected to the Tar Heels, or maybe that I think will be in the near future. And so, I've also been doing a lot of thinking about, okay, Carolina's playing this really close to the vest. Clearly, there are names that they're talking to that we're not necessarily always hearing about. So, not that this guy is one that the Tar Heels are looking at, but it's this concept, this idea of who might some of those other people be based on what Carolina needs and what they're looking for and things like that. So I want to present to you today Olivier Nkamhoua, Duke killer. So if for no other reason than that, right? But very, very seriously, there's nothing out there publicly connecting North Carolina to Olivier Nkamhoua, but I want to play this game of dropping in some off the radar names for us to consider. So Nkamhoua is entering his fifth and final year. He's using that COVID eligibility. He is a 6'8", 223-pound forward, originally, interestingly enough, from Helsinki, Finland. Started all 36 games for the Vols last year. And so basically what I just want to do is take several minutes here to just unpack, here's why I want this young man. And honestly, why don't you just go take a look at some highlights of his while we chat about him. Number one, we joked about it, but very seriously, he's a Duke killer. The main reason Tennessee beat Duke in the NCAA tournament this year was Olivier Nkamhoua. But while for Carolina, like, that's neat and that's cool and that's fun, but what that tells me is a bigger thing about Nkamhoua and his capability. Because you think about who Duke is and what they had last year and all their athleticism and capability, and he rises above all that and is able to compete with that team or anyone else of that caliber. Meaning Olivier Nkamhoua can rise to the biggest moment, like in the NCAA tournament, and he can compete with any of the best players in America. In that specific game, was 10 of 13 from the field, 3 of 4 from the three-point line, 4 of 5 on free throws, 5 rebounds to tie a season high 27 points. Yeah, he did that in another game as well. This dude is capable of going off, has done it at the highest level as part of the SEC. And so he's a Duke killer, but it's more than just that. Number two, a reason I want Olivier Nkamhoua or think he would be a good addition for the Tar Heels is that it's kind of coming out of what we just said, but he is wildly athletic. You think about pairing somebody like that at the 4 with an Armando Bacot at the 5. Armando is a phenomenal basketball player, but it's not because of his high level athleticism. When you think about Nkamhoua, he's, if not the one of the most athletic 6'8", 6'9" forwards in college basketball. And we'll talk about this more in a second. He's not a prolific three-point shooter, but he can and will play out there because of that athleticism. I compare him to Pete Nance, and Pete, again, as we talked about, is a really, really, really good basketball player. But he does not have this level of athleticism that Olivier Nkamhoua has, able to get out on the perimeter, do what he needs to do, because that's it. Because whether it's stretching the floor with your shot or with your ability to play from outside as an athlete, I don't care what you got to do. I just need you out of Armando's way. And Olivier Nkamhoua can do that because of his athleticism. Now, that said, a third reason I like him as a potential target is that he is respectable beyond the arc. Again, he's not a prolific three-point shooter, but he's a career 36.4% three-point shooter. I mean, that's over 35. That's what I've been talking about with any of these guys. It's like, can you get above 35? He can. Now, here's the thing. It is not a high volume at all. Part of that is him. Part of that is a Rick Barnes playing style, right? And so that's just something to keep in mind, that he can hit it, but is not done so at a prolific level. Another reason I think he might be a good fit for Carolina is that he can score in a multitude of ways, whether it's back to the basket, whether it's driving from the perimeter in, and perhaps most of all, he is dangerous in the pick and roll game. And I love the thought of, if he was the starting four to Bacot's starting five, RJ can run that pick and roll action with either one of those guys to success. That's nice to have that variability. A couple other things. When you look at his points per game last year at Tennessee, it's one of those that doesn't jump off the page at you like, oh, you got to have this guy. He's a bucket. 10.8 points per game last year. But remember who his coach was, Rick Barnes. Tennessee teams just don't score much. There were a lot of Tennessee games I remember watching this past year. I was like, first team to 40 wins, right? Like that's Tennessee's calling card under Rick Barnes. That's any Rick Barnes team. And so scoring 10 points, like, put it in our ACC terms, that's like scoring 10 points a game for Virginia, basically, right? And so that's impressive. And I'd be curious how that would translate to a higher octane offense like a Carolina. What would that be? Would that be more like 12 or 15 points per game? Perhaps so, but something to keep in mind, that while 10.8 points a game might not seem all that much, consider the context. And then finally, something I'll point out is that Carolina, just plain and simple, has to defend better next year. They cannot continue to defend at the level or lower level that they have. Keep in mind, Olivier Nkamhoua has been doing that under Rick Barnes, which was Tennessee was the number one defense in the entire nation for the majority of this past season, despite their offensive shortcomings. And this guy's a big part of that. Again, remember, he started and played every game. If you can't defend, you don't play for Rick Barnes, and this guy's playing a lot for Rick Barnes. He'd bring that mentality and that capability with him to Chapel Hill and would do a lot of things. So I love this kind of whole package and what it could be. Again, he's able to do a lot of things with high-level athleticism, able to score in a multitude of ways, able to defend. I just think he would be a good target. And we've been looking at least one of those 4 remaining scholarships has to be a front court player. And I think Olivier Nkamhoua could be one of those. Now, we do need to address the Jalen Washington of it all. Somebody said that on a comment on yesterday's video, like, hey, are we just forgetting about Jalen Washington? No, absolutely not. When we talk about Mackenzie Mbako, when we talk about Olivier Nkamhoua or anyone else in the front court, Jalen Washington absolutely factors into that mix. It's just you want guys fighting for playing time and for positions. And so Jalen Washington is 100% in this conversation. So I'd love to know what you think. Go watch some film on Olivier Nkamhoua. Let me know your thoughts on this young man and if you think he might be a suitable addition in the front court for the Tar Heels next year. Speaking of next year, it's hard to believe, but we are already at the point where it's time for the spring football game. I cannot believe it. What am I going to be watching for in that spring football game on Saturday? Oh, we'll talk about that in just a second. But first, this episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Are you looking for a delicious snack, but you don't want all the sugar and calories? Then you need to get on the most best tasting protein bar ever, Built. You got to try them. If you're like me and you want healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste, then Built Bars and Built Puffs are the exact right thing for you. You won't even think they're good for you, but they are. And why? Well, to start with, they're all covered in 100% real dark chocolate. And they come in crazy good flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream. Yeah. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And really, best yet, they are legitimately healthy. Just 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and yet 17 grams of protein. Plus, now you don't have to wait around for an order to come to your door from built.com because you can just go on down to your local Walmart or Sam's Club and grab a box. Or if you want specialty flavors, of course, excuse me, you can still order from built.com. Try it now. You can thank me later when you try Built, a proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. All right, spring football game is coming up Saturday, April 15th, tomorrow, 3 p.m. You can find the game on ACC Network Extra. Here's the thing. This is a completely different feel than last year. Remember this time last year? We had no idea. Well, we had an idea, but we didn't know with any level of certainty who Carolina's starting quarterback would be in the 2022 season. Now, all along, if you were dialed in with us on Locked On Heels, you knew that I was like, it's going to be Drake Maye. It will be Drake Maye. And it was. But still, Coach Brown never came out and firmly said it. We just didn't get that answer in the spring of Drake Maye or Jacoby Criswell. But boy, does it feel different this year with that peace of mind of Drake Maye's your guy. You know Drake Maye's your guy. And if there's any quarterback, anything, it's looking towards the future because this time next year, we're going to be right back to that of who will be QB1 for the 2024 season. So one quick thing is that number 2, QB2 has been up for grabs, and we thought it would be based on things Coach Brown had said, but it has been snagged. And that's by redshirt freshman Connor Harrell, who has really come along lately in practice and jumped up and has taken that winner. And so then Tad Hudson, the early enrollee true freshman, will, at least for now, be number 3 on the depth chart. And so that's kind of where we're at with that. And that's what where things stand heading into spring practice. So that means that we'll probably see both of those guys, but mainly Drake Maye and Connor Harrell. Now, keep in mind, we're going to talk about what I'm watching for on Saturday as this unfolds. But before we do so, keep in mind that spring games, it's not just like a straight up 4-quarter, 60-minute game. That's not what we're doing. It will take on several different looks. And Coach Brown, on his media availability back on Tuesday, had mentioned that they weren't even firmly sure yet what spring practice or what the spring game would look like. Although he said it will probably essentially be very similar to last season's spring game. So just keep that in mind as you watch. It's really just kind of a fluid thing. We probably put more game pressure on it than does the program. So I'm going to give you 6 things specifically that I'm watching for. But before I say those, here's just some big picture things that you're always looking for in these scenarios. Number 1, you want to get out of this unscathed, no injuries. Obviously there's always guys working back from injury, but you don't want to sustain any major injuries in a moment like spring game. And so we'll be watching for that. Can Carolina get out clean? You're also watching for the newcomers. What did the early enrollee freshmen do? How do they perform? Have any of them risen to the occasion already where they're jumping into legit roles? You're also, the other group of newcomers you're watching for are transfers. Carolina lost a lot last year, in whether it was to graduation or to the transfer portal itself, but they also brought in some dudes that I'm really excited to see in this kind of format and context. So not only are we watching for the freshmen, we're watching for the transfers. But other than that, here are the 6 more specific things I want to have my eye on Saturday. Number 1, seems like a weird place to start. but it's true. The offensive line and the defensive line. These two units both have to improve in a major way in 2023 if Carolina is going to have the ability to succeed at the level they want to. And if both lines continue to perform at the way they did last season, they're not going to get there. So we are watching to see, can they get after the quarterback on defense? Will we see sacks? And on the other side, can they keep Drake Maye from having to run for his life on a regular basis? So that's frankly the number one thing I'm watching for. Number two, have some stud linebackers at North Carolina in Cedric Gray and Powell Echols. But as you might recall, the depth behind them is scant, or was last year. And you lost Rara Dilworth. So who are you watching for? Who like, how do we build depth behind Gray and Echols? Well, watch out for returners Deuce Caldwell and Sebastian Cheeks. Remember those guys that you've seen before. And watch true freshmen Michael Short and Amari Campbell, both of whom Coach Brown specifically pointed out by name. And so we're going to be watching for them to see what they do. Number three, things to watch for as we take a look at this is the running back room. Remember, coming into the season last year, we discussed how the running back room was probably the deepest position room on the entire team. 6 guys that all figured to get some level of playing time in. And then you had the British Brooks injury, you had Caleb Hood injury, all these things happening, guys going down, guys working in. And so I'm waiting to see what does it look like this year. Coach Brown at that same press conference on Tuesday mentioned that George Pettaway has been hampered by an ankle lately. And so we'll see what his availability is tomorrow for the game. But mentioned that Omarion Hampton and Elijah Greene are looking like the lead backs right now. Essentially, that's what you're wanting to get down to, is a main 2 with somebody else right behind them who can be ready to step up if one of them goes down. And so British Brooks is obviously working back and right now probably projects to be that third guy in, but we'll keep our eyes on Pettaway as well. Fourth thing I am watching for: how on earth do you replace Josh Downs and Antoine Greene? Remember when Sam Howell came into his final year before going to the NBA draft, is like, oh, I know we lost Diami, and I know we lost Javonte and Mike Carter and all these skills guys, but it'll be fine. It wasn't fine, right? We all know how that year went 2 seasons ago. So the question is, how do you avoid that same thing happening again? How do you work skills players in? Well, thankfully, Carolina's got some guys coming back that already have playing time and experience. Also, thankfully, Carolina got some great transfers in, and a guy that was a freshman coming up to be a sophomore that should do well too. So, according to Coach Brown, the 4 guys that are the main 4 in that receiver room right now are returners Kobe Paysour. He's the slot guy that would be in for Josh Downs when he was out last season, and Gavin Blackwell. Along with them, Tez Walker, who transferred in from Kent State, and Nate McCollum, who came in from Georgia Tech, have both impressed and done a great job. So it's those 4 that are the main 4 at this point. But wait a second. What about Andre Greene? I thought he was going to be a stud. Well, he's not in that top 4 that Coach Brown has been talking about. However, he has been high in his praise that Andre Greene has really, really been coming along lately and doing a great job in the last few practices. So it's a long time from now till the fall, so we'll keep our eyes on that. But those are kind of then the 5 that I'm watching, those 4 that Coach Brown talked about, plus Andre Greene. And oh, by the way, don't forget, all 3 of the tight ends that were major factors last year are all back. Bryson Nesbitt, Morales, John Copenhaver, all of them back, ready to go. So Drake Maye is going to have some dudes to throw to. Just be ready, and we'll watch out for that. And hopefully they combine with that running back room to do work. The final 2 things I'm looking for are big picture on either side of the ball. What does the offense look like with a brand new offensive coordinator in Chip Lindsey and a brand new offensive line coach, right? Like just doing all of these thing? Well, Coach Brown has said that the passing game is essentially the same. That was the goal with Coach Longo moving on to not change too much because Drake Maye had a system that he's working under and doing great with. However, he did say watch for some changes in protection schemes and how we block things. And so that goes back to that offensive line thing we were talking about just a little bit ago is we expect that they're going to do some things to try to keep Drake Maye upright a little bit longer. And I say to that, thank you so very much. And then the final thing we'll be looking for is on the other side of the ball. Dear goodness, will the defense be any better from each level? We talked so much last season about how the linebackers really were the consistent ones with the secondary and the line being the question marks constantly, always. Well, we know the defense has had a bigger emphasis on tackling this offseason, and so we'll keep tabs on that to see what that looks like in the spring game and beyond. We'll see if the secondary is able to compete at a higher level. I mean, it's just a baseline like that, right? We'll see if the defensive line, as we mentioned earlier, is able to get in the backfield and wreak some havoc a little bit. And then can Echols and Greene continue to do what they did all last year to be the central guys that you can always depend on game in and game out? Should be fun. Can't wait to see this team in action on Saturday. Again, as a reminder, it will be 3:00 on ACC Network Extra. Want to take you on a whip around of Chapel Hill, a little bit more information on the football game and some other athletics teams that will be in action this weekend. We're going to do that in just a second. All right, here we go. Let me give you some more details about the spring football game, and then I'll just talk to you about some other teams that will be in action as well. Something really cool that's happening is prior to the game, there is a fan fest from 1 to 2:30. It's around the bell tower. I just think this is a neat opportunity to come and be connected with what's going on. There will be other sports going on campus that very day. Baseball, softball, and women's lacrosse all in action. I'll give you the more specific details on that in just a second as we get to those sports. Some good news is that parking is free for this event. And so you just park and hang out all day, right? Come be on campus and just take in a bunch of Carolina athletics. As I've already said, you can watch this on ACC Network Extra. And oh, by the way, as you're wondering about personnel, Coach Brown said that once the game is over on Saturday, they will plan to finalize the post-spring practice depth chart, and we will get that some point next week. And so obviously we'll unpack that, talk about it, and look at depth charts and all of that kind of stuff. And keep in mind, now that we have the official transfer portal windows, the transfer portal opens back up again on Saturday. And so post-spring is often that time where you might get another name or two leaving the program. So just keep your eyes on that. All right, what else is going on this weekend in Tar Heel action? Let's start with the most dominant team this spring, the women's tennis team that just keeps on rolling. They are now up to 26-0, 12-0 in ACC play. They finish off conference matches today, Friday, against Duke, 3 p.m. That's the last one, and then they'll start ACC championships next Wednesday. And so hopefully the ladies can finish off this literally perfect regular season. They won the ITA indoors. They haven't lost a single match. They haven't lost a single point in each of their last two matches against NC State and Wake Forest. Can they finish off a North Carolina State sweep, basically, to do the same against Duke today? So we'll keep our eyes on that. And then obviously starting that road to hopefully getting that first NCAA national championship for the ladies. We really hope they can do that. On the men's side of things, the fellas are 15-7 overall, 7-3 in ACC play. They have two more matches, both of them this weekend. They host Florida State at 6 tonight, Friday, and then host Miami on Sunday at noon. And so that also finishes off their regular season. And then they also start their ACC championships on Wednesday. So both the men and women with big opportunities in front of them. Let's go from the court to the diamond, where both baseball and softball are in action this weekend. The guys are 23-10 overall, 8-5 in ACC play, currently second place in the Coastal behind Virginia. And listen, the guys have been playing really good baseball, They're going for what would be their 4th straight ACC series win, having won their last 3 in a row. So they're hosting Miami this weekend. The first game was last night on Thursday. I'm recording this before we know the outcome of that game. You already know it by the time you're watching or listening to this. And then hopefully it's a win, and the guys just need another win either on Friday or Saturday to lock up that 4th straight series win. But the information for Friday, the game is at 7 p.m. and that one's on ESPN too. So make sure to check it out. And then the series finale on Saturday at noon, right before the football game on ACC Network Extra. As for the ladies, the softball team is hosting Syracuse, one of many Carolina athletic teams taking on Syracuse this weekend. A Saturday doubleheader, 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. So you can catch the first one before the football game if you want to do that. And again at 2 to wrap up the series on Sunday on ACC Network. Let's move to lacrosse. Women's lacrosse still playing great, has only lost those 2 times the road matches against just top 12 opponents. 11-2 overall, 6-1 in ACC play. A loss at number 3 Northwestern. I believe the other one was at number 12 Notre Dame pretty recently. Well, massive match Saturday. This is the one I want to encourage you to go to. Hosting number 1 in the nation, Syracuse, at noon. So go check that out. And then the final regular season game for the women's lacrosse is next Thursday at Duke. So hopefully they can do that. Men's lacrosse also in action against Syracuse. This one's actually up in Maryland, and that is at 4 p.m. Track, women's golf, men's golf, they're all in action as well. Make sure to check out all the Tar Heel athletics going on this weekend. It's a busy, bustling weekend, and I love it. I'm here for it. Friends, that's it for today's episode of Locked On Tar Heels. That's it for this week on Locked On Tar Heels. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Heels. You can follow me on Twitter at Isaac Shade. Send the show an email, lockedontarheels@gmail.com. Would love to have more conversation with you there. You can subscribe to the show on YouTube. Man, just massive thanks to everyone who's coming. It's been like wildfire lately. It's so fun. Love to see it. Love to have everyone joining in. Smash the like button and leave comments on the show. Really appreciate you joining me this whole week, and of course today, especially to those of you that are tuning in every day. It's just so fun to build this community together. So I say thank you to the everydayers. You all are so appreciated. Thanks. Friends, it is a great day to be a Tar Heel every single stinking day. You know it. We'll talk again on Monday, but until then, peace.